Welcome back, everyone, to the second season of Making Waves, the show from the Chicago Maritime Museum, all about our city's past, present, and future on the waterways. I'm Madeline Crispell, the museum's curator, and with me, as always, is Sari Breslin, the museum's education director.
Thanks, Madeline. This September, we'll be commemorating the 166th anniversary of the sinking of the Lady Elgin, the deadliest shipwreck in the Great Lakes history. With us to discuss this history is Sharon Cook. With a dive to the Lady Elgin, Sharon Cook was able to intertwine 4 interests: genealogy, history, Great Lakes advocacy, and shipwrecks. Her great-great-grandmother perished in Lake Michigan in 1860 when the Augusta rammed the Lady Elgin on her way from Chicago to Milwaukee. It occurred to Sharon that she could learn to dive to get to that wreck. When she got there about 20 years ago, zebra mussels had taken residency on the wreck. 10 years later, quaggas added even more layers to the weight on what was left of the vessel. The mussels and over 180 other invasive species have changed our Great Lakes forever.
During Sharon's career in government affairs, she represented such diverse clients as the Milwaukee Brewers Baseball Club, Wisconsin Girl Scout, Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, Alliance for the Great Lakes, the Bradley Center, and served in the Milwaukee Mayor's Cabinet lobbying for the city. Presently, she's a member of the Wisconsin Coastal Management Council, the University of Wisconsin Sea Grant Community Council, and a committed volunteer tutoring in her local public school. She dives less now, but is active with many outdoor pursuits in addition to researching wrecks and family. Thank you for joining us, Sharon.
Well, I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for asking me. I have an interesting story.
You have a very interesting story. So interesting that yesterday I was actually visiting our wonderful Maritime Museum with my grandsons, and they were taking a look at our exhibit on the Lady Elgin. We have a picture here that shows the Lady Elgin, and I paid attention to one of the screens there that had, quotes by some of the survivors of the Lady Elgin, and I noticed one was from Jacob Cook.
Mm-hmm. And here you are.
And here we are.
Talking to not a descendant. He was a great-great-uncle, so.
Great-great-uncle.
Yeah.
But if you could get us a little in, Sharon, about this story. I know many of us here in Chicago have heard of the Eastland disaster. We've heard of the Titanic. But fewer of us know about what is the deadliest shipwreck in Great Lakes history, the Lady Elgin.
Well, the Lady Elgin started her career in 1851 in Buffalo, New York. And for the beginning, she went from Buffalo to Chicago with freight, with lumber, with all sorts of things. One crazy thing is They had a circus for a while that they were transporting from Buffalo to Chicago. And in Cleveland, an elephant wrapped its trunk around the steering mechanism, and they couldn't figure out. They had to get that off.
So you wouldn't think necessarily elephants are one of the obstacles you have to worry about on the freshwater inland seas, and you'd be wrong.
So Lady Elgin went from Buffalo to Chicago primarily. In 1854 or 54, the Sioux locks were opened, and so then the Lady Elgin started her route from Chicago to Superior and back again. About every 10 days, she would make that little trip.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the Lady Elgin was docking in Chicago often, right? I mean,
exactly, every 10 days.
This photo we showed even was of the Lady Elgin in Chicago.
Yes, the photo was taken the night before the accident happened.
Wow.
The Lady Elgin was docked there. And some, I can't remember who it was, some photographer happened to be visiting Chicago and snapped that picture.
Wow.
And if you look closely at it, you can see little pieces of it. In the back end, you can see a band that was part of the party barge that came from Milwaukee.
So, party barge, should we get into the story of that fateful trip, or shall we start with your family's connection?
Well, let's start with my family. I think there's a map of that.
Yes, and we can pull this up right now.
Thank you. So, my family started north of Toronto. Collingwood is, by that time, a train was put from Toronto to Collingwood, specifically to get around having to go, you can see in the map, otherwise you have to go to Toronto, go through Lake Erie.
Right.
You get up there, it's easier. So that's where my family would have gotten on. The other things on the map, the other locations, Chicago, obviously. Winnetka is where the Lady Elgin met her doom. Milwaukee is where my family was supposed to be putting in. And Stockbridge is where they had settled. So my great-great-grandmother and her son Jacob, the one you learned about yesterday, were going home north of Toronto to visit great-great-great-grandma and to bring a daughter home with them. Her oldest was 25 years old, the oldest of 12.
Wow.
So they went up there to visit, and on Tuesday afternoon in September of that fateful 1860, they got on a boat called the Sun. It was a propeller sun.
We actually have a photo of the propeller sun that you were able to track down.
Yes, thank you, Brendan Baylod, who is a historian. Many people, if you're watching this video, you know it. But that the photo on the boat on the right is the sun, and it was the first time Brendan had seen an actual photo. So this was taken obviously afterwards. But it does demonstrate when a boat such as the propeller sun comes up next to a paddle wheeler, how they would have transferred from one to the the
And
so
why would they have been doing that? In your
access.
case?
I mean, because the holds would have been connected through a gangway underneath, so you could go from one to the other very easily without having to go on pier and then come back.
Okay.
The same way that if I'm going to different locations in Chicago, I'll go out at Lake and transfer to a different line of the subway.
So that's the kind of thing.
Oh, there you go.
So my family was coming home from Collingwood. They were supposed to put into Milwaukee, and it was too foggy.
Oh.
So the captain, much like you do now if you get diverted, and delayed and diverted, said, I'll take you to Chicago and I'll book you passage home on some other boat. And
That fateful night.
Yes. Oh, that one. You got it. Now, the Lady so they're here. I mean, they got wound up here. The Lady Elgin, back to this, Chicago, Superior, and back again, was coming from Superior. Was supposed to arrive in Milwaukee to pick up a bunch of party people. The politics in Wisconsin were such that the governor at the time was an abolitionist. And he asked some folk from Milwaukee who were in militias, if we secede from the Union, as someone had suggested, because of the the slavery issue. Will you be loyal and defend Wisconsin, or will you be loyal to the federal government? And the people who ran the militia had been West Point grads. They swore their allegiance to the federal government, to the United States of America, and they said, sorry, Charlie. The guns that the militia used were state-owned. So the governor sent his adjutant general over to collect those guns.
Right.
So now these militia, they needed something to march around with. So they were buying guns out of St. Louis. And this party barge, you bought a ticket for $1 to get on the Lady Elgin in Milwaukee, come to Chicago, march around. There was a rumor that Stephen Douglas, their presidential candidate, was going to be in town. So you go down to Chicago, have a day, and go home. That's what was supposed to happen.
Right.
So much like the son that had trouble getting into Milwaukee, it also delayed the Lady Elgin getting into Milwaukee on its way south. So when it finally left, it was like 10, 11 o'clock on Friday night to get down here to Chicago. So they did march around. They went to lunch. They did these things. And late that evening, on a Friday night, they had started collecting themselves back on the Lady Elgin. And the Lady Elgin left about 11 o'clock at night. One of the reasons the captain wished to do this is because he had a contract with the U.S. government, and they were paid $200 to run the mail from Chicago to Superior and back again.
So Captain Jack Wilson doesn't want to be late for his government contract.
You got it. And Captain Jack Wilson figures in other things. He had taken the helm of the Lady Elgin a little more than a year earlier in Superior, because the captains that had been at the helm there had a little trouble with the Lady Elgin. They had run aground and had done these other things. And so they hired Captain Wilson, who had been the first captain to be at the helm of a boat that went through the Soo locks. So, I mean, he was a talented and skillful.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's just the captain of the ship. He's not part of the Union Guard militia that Governor Randall took the guns away from.
Nope. He's just the captain of the ship.
Right. So they're leaving port in Chicago at around 11 o'clock at night. What happens?
They start heading north. Now, my family, all of them had cabins. Or the two women had one cabin, and the other guy had another one. And I don't have the actual letters. The person wrote a transcription of them, like in 1960. But Jacob wrote letters home to Stockbridge when things happened, after things happened. And he says that had they known it was going to be a party barge, they wouldn't have gotten on it, because people were drinking and having fun. There was a brass band playing, a German band was playing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we have a picture of Jacob and his wife.
We do right here. This just in the years after.
Yeah, this comes up later. So back to the accident itself. The Augusta was coming from on a northeast wind overloaded with lumber. They loaded in the hold, on the deck, everything.
Which was typical. I mean, these small lumber schooners, in order to make the money that would make these voyages worth it, they would really pack themselves full with logs.
So it's coming from the northeast, heading for Chicago. At that time, lights on boats weren't regulated. They had to have a light, but was it here, was it there? That came 4 or 5 years later by an act of Congress. So the Augusta rams the Lady Elgin. And by that time, a storm had happened. So this Lady Elgin was up and rising and up and rising. So the bowsprit hit the Lady Elgin, stuck into it, and then with the force of it, kind of went around and just tore a hole in the Lady Elgin below the water line. Because when the Lady Elgin went down, went down. So about 20 minutes later, or half an hour, who's counting time? So this poor guy, Jacob, the 19-year-old, he was 19. He was in his cabin, he said, and with the force got thrown over furniture and rushed to his mother's cabin. And he said his mother had been in bed an hour, his sister half an hour. He gathered them up, and if I can read just a little bit from his letters. So he ran to their stateroom and got them up on the deck as they were instructed to do. And he got them a life preserver, which at that point was
right. It's not what you're imagining. What you get if you're kayaking, the orange life preserver.
Yeah, it's a probably 4x6 and a board actually, and you can see one at the Milwaukee County Historical Society.
There you go, road trip Chicago.
So they're up on the deck. And we stayed in the cabin about 20. They got up on top of the boat. Mother and sister kissed me and said we would all be saved. I tried to encourage them all I could. I got 2 planks and showed them how to use them. In 10 minutes after we got on top of the boat, it went down. Oh my God, I shall never forget it. When it went down, I jumped on some little boards. They were not able to hold me up. I went down. When I came up, I got hold of something and got onto it. It was so dark that we could not see, only when there came a flash of lightning. I hollered as soon as I could for them to hold on until I could get to them, but I got no answer. Only people around me struggling to death in the waves. Yes. Oh, them death screams, he writes.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody knows what it was except those of us who were there. Oh, Lord, deliver me from another such time. So my great-great-grandmother's body was never found. The family lore is, and it's been some documentation, that she had sewn gold coins. She had been to Canada too to sell some family properties. And so she was laden down with that, as well as the what they wore, hoop skirts and all those kinds of things.
Right, the amount of metal and fabric alone would have dragged you down.
The sister, Elizabeth, came, she was 25, and they found her 5 days later, her body all bruised. By this time, Jacob's dad, Pa, in his words, my great-great-grandfather, and another son had come to Chicago to find these people. And after they found Elizabeth, Jacob writes, Pa went home with it. Watson and I are still looking for Mother.
And I appreciate you reading this, Sharon, because I think especially here in Chicago, so much of the history that's been done is about the wreck itself, and perhaps the archaeological side of this. But in Wisconsin,
it's very personal stories like this. 300 people perished on this thing,
right?
And it affected everyone. Our family, she had the money. They were going to be buying farms for the older boys in Calumet County near Stockbridge, Wisconsin. And of course, that wasn't there. So what happens? So you had the election. Abraham Lincoln is elected. The secession that happened was the South seceding, and we have a war. And by the time, about another year or two, 4 of Jane's sons and 2 of her sons-in-law had joined the Union Army.
Wow.
Partly, I think, because they had to. I mean, there needed to be something. The picture that was shown, if you back up, could you back up? The picture here is when Jacob not only survived 13 hours being tossed around in Lake Michigan, then he went to the war, but you can't quite see, I'm sure, but he's wearing 2 different shoes. He's got a slipper and a shoe on.
I feel like I can sort of tell one seems to go up higher into the pant leg than the other.
And this is his wedding picture on one of his leaves home, but he was injured, and so he couldn't wear a shoe on that foot. He wore that.
There's so much tragedy in the country in those 5 years.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And I think we have the next picture is of all of her children that were left behind.
So my great-grandfather was a poor little almost 10-year-old boy. He was a twin. his birthday was several days after his mother drowned. So he's in Calumet County on a farm waiting for mom to come home and his big brother and his big sister that he hasn't seen in a long time. So the guy in the middle at the top of this picture is William Cook. He is my great-grandfather and with his and the remaining children. They all, all of them had successes in many ways. Jacob had a career in lumber and wound up in Pomona, California.
How about that?
Yeah, figure that out.
Wow. And you said Jacob is in the
He's the bottom right
bottom
one.
right.
With the beard right
Yeah.
next to that,
And the
that
cool
post.
tie.
Yep. On the top is S.A. Cook. He was a U.S. Senator and had run for governor in Wisconsin. The fella on the left in the middle is Watson Cook, the one who went with his pa to go find their ma. He wound up in the pension office, the Civil War pension office. So they all had different careers.
I mean,
and all
despite this tragedy in the family, it seems like everybody goes on to a pretty great family legacy.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of family legacy, we have a little bit of your work that you've done on this that we can show here, underwater now.
Underwater. So as I said, or the introduction said that it's like all of a sudden it dawned on me, I could dive to that site.
Yeah.
It's at 55 feet of water, and so I learned to dive so I could go to it. And this is the top of the smokestack
Wow.
that kaboomed over.
That
There
had to
were
have
two
been very emotional.
As I talked about it, I didn't think about it until some little kid asked me, did it bother me to swim where my great-great-grandma drowned? I gotta tell you, at that moment, it's like, that deck that they were standing on could have been where I had paddled over. You know,
Right. What a
swum
surreal
over.
experience.
It was. And of course, the Lady Elgin. People think a wreck, you're going to see a boat down there. Well, between the storm, people on these were all strapping young men who were on the party barge.
Right.
There were 10 axes on the boat. They were, so they chopped the boat apart so they could have something to hang on to. They chopped the deck, the pilot house off so it could float. So it's from that reason. And then when the boilers blew, that happened. They went crazy. So the wreck, the debris field is like a mile long.
Right. So, I mean, our legion of viewers will know from our Grosse Pointe Lighthouse episode back in May that there are tangible effects of the Lady Elgin in the world around us. The lights we see on ships, the Grosse Pointe Lighthouse in Evanston. But if you could, in our last minute or two here, Sharon, just say a little bit about what that means to you or the history of the Great Lakes, how important this history is.
It does kind of combine things for me, as you can see by my activities. Because it is important. The Great Lakes are important.
Right.
And when I was doing work with the Alliance for the Great Lakes and seeking passage of the Great Lakes Water Compact, if people didn't want to have me come in and talk to them about quagga mussels or bilges or bulkheads, I said, oh, my great-great-grandmother drowned, I went to the site. Oh, then I could go in and they'd like to hear that story.
Right.
And I could talk about lake levels and
Right.
how they were lower at the first time I dove to the site and then higher the next time I went to the site.
And human interest, and then you can let the mussel interest in.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Sneak it in there somewhere. You
Right.
betcha. You bet.
Well, this is
And you you asked at some point about other items and stuff they might learn. There were two books that, the first book that was written about the Lady Elgin was in 1923 or something. So this was sort of the Lady Elgin Bible, written by a guy named Scanlon. And then Valerie Van Heest really pulled a lot of information together to put the book out. And this one
Right.
came out last year with more artifacts and stuff in there.
And of course, Valerie Van Heest is also the person who curated the exhibition on the Lady Elgin at the Chicago Maritime Museum. If you were interested in this interview with Sharon today and in her family's fascinating history, which thank you very much for
Thank you,
sharing
Phil.
this
Thank
with
you.
us.
Yes, thank you.
You
Sharon.
can learn more about the wreck and some of the history behind the Lady Elgin at the Chicago Maritime Museum, open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 4. And of course, you can always learn more on our website, chicagomaritimmuseum.com. Thank you very much, Sharon,
Thank
for
you
joining us
very
today.
much.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Sari.
Fascinating.